it's great to see. I haven't seen you since we parted ways in Chicago. But obviously we keep in touch on social media and whatnot. And I'll be honest, I much more enjoy the wife's social media because she always posts the dog and the dogs and the girls, and any of our devoted Morning Cup of Hockey listeners, they know the golden retriever thing is the world to me. And so, even before I got to know Stromer, he was like one of my favorite guys in the league. He's a big golden retriever guy. So, the hockey stuff people can look up. I go right to the good stuff, Stromer. So what's going on with you, man? How's your summer?
Not much, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's good. Yeah, it's busy. 2 kids now, 2 dogs.
Wow.
Yeah, so 3-year-old.
4 under 2, right?
Yeah, pretty much 4 under 2, 4 under 3, I guess. My daughter's 3 and a bit, and my second daughter, Emerson, is 10 months, and then I got a 1-year-old golden retriever and a 2-year-old golden retriever. So I got a pretty busy household over here, but we make the most
Holy
of it.
Shit.
And, it's good to be busy. There's always stuff to do. So, like I said, it is busy at times, but we find, we make the most of it and we enjoy it. So, life's crazy at this moment, but I know it's all going to be worth it in the long run, and it's still fun.
Where do you guys spend? Where do you spend your off season?
Just outside Toronto, Oakville, Ontario.
What were you doing yesterday? Was it a team golf outing? I saw the TSN interview you did. It yesterday.
It was a golf tournament for the Smile Zone Foundation. It's like a charity foundation that my agent Pat Morris is a big part of, and I've gone to it I think for 6 or 7 years in a row. I know it's a great cause, and there's tons of hockey players, tons of media personalities, and lots of people in and around the game that are there. So I think just to get a few more eyeballs, they asked TSN and Sportsnet to come out, and it's great. They do the first up morning show from the course, and so did that first, and then Mark Masters asked me a couple questions, and away we went.
Yeah, I saw you had a fun answer about turning the goal differential around this season, which is pretty funny. And I got to put my hand up. I doubted you guys all year last year. I was like, there's no fucking way the Capitals are making the playoffs. I said it on this show every week, and you guys continue to prove me wrong every week. So I got to ask you. I asked the hard-hitting journalism questions on this show. I'm putting you on the hot seat. Can you just make it make sense? Like, what was going on with the team last year? Because it felt like the deadline, it wasn't going to trend toward the playoffs, and all of a sudden, Carbs and you guys figured it out, and you made a really good push in the second half.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing, like when people just look at stats and they see kind of obviously the goal differential wasn't good, but I think probably I want to say 6 or 7 games this year, last year, we were down 3-0 in the third, and it just turned into 7-0 or 7-1, and it was it just happened kind of quickly like that. So, when that happens, your goal differential goes down, obviously. But I think a huge reason why we made the playoffs is yes, we lost Kuznetsov and Mantha at the deadline, but really Kuznetsov hadn't been playing for I think around a month at that time, and so we pretty much lost one roster player on our team. We didn't pick anyone up, so I think we didn't really have any turnover at the deadline, whereas teams some teams that are selling have a lot of turnover, bring new guys in, and it takes a little while to adjust. So we had the same team. We didn't really change much from before the deadline to after the deadline. Obviously, it sucked losing Mantha, but we kind of just had guys step up and find ways to make great plays, and we ended up doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I think a lot of people share this sentiment. It's good for the National Hockey League to have Alexander Ovechkin in the playoffs. I mean, the guy is still, he's on the Mount Rushmore, and it seems like you and him have found some really good chemistry in the way that you guys play together. And when I think about your history, Stromer, overall, you played junior hockey with McDavid. You had more points than him his last year, right? I think I looked that up, and you actually had more points than him. It was probably you, DeBrincat, and McDavid on a line, which is not really all that fair to the rest of the league. Then you get to Chicago, and you develop better, you, Cat, and Kane develop great chemistry, and people were always clamoring to have you with those guys more, especially when I was there, because you were one of the only guys that I think could really think the game to play with Kaner and DeBrincat. And then you go to Washington and you gel with Ovi. So, what is it about the way that you play, or what is it about these guys? Because these are Mount Rushmore players. I mean, we're talking about 3 of the greats all time, and you slide in so nicely with these guys.
Yeah, I think I think it's obviously you don't get to choose where you play. I think that's the first and foremost. So you kind of you got to adapt to whatever gets thrown at you. I think with McDavid, when I first got to junior, I was 16 and he had already played the year in the league. We were the same age, but we really became close friends. And I found that a lot with over my career. I find like the closer you are with some guys and the the friendships that you develop off the ice, I think really translates to on the ice. DeBrincat and I were best friends, and we had been since the beginning, since junior. And I think that and obviously I got traded from Arizona to Chicago. He was the first person I called, and he had read a Bob McKenzie tweet saying like there's a trade coming Arizona to Chicago, and then he got a call from me, and we were just like, there's just no way, and then it ended up happening. So I think, I think to kind of answer your question, I'm very fortunate to play with very, very good players. I've been that way my whole career. I think, hockey IQ and hockey sense has a big part of it. Like you said, I think, those guys know how to score. They want to score. They want to be, they want to have the most points in the league. They want to have the most points, at that night in the game. And, I've tried to be a guy that produces at every level I've been at. And when you get the opportunity to play with those guys, you kind of got to just take it and run with it, because if you don't, someone else is going to. So I found that out the hard way in Chicago, first parts of my time there. When you're not playing well, other guys are going to jump ahead of you and find a way to produce with those guys. And then the coach is going to go with what's hot. So, that's kind of the way it goes. And I've been very fortunate to play with unbelievable players like Kane and DeBrincat. Obviously were, two of my favorite line mates I've ever had. Of course we had some good chemistry, some good success. And then when you get to play with a guy like Ovi, it's just, you got to find a way to get him the puck. It's a lot different than Kane, where Kane wants the puck, and Ovi, he wants the puck when he can shoot it, and you got to find a way to get it to him. And there's a reason why they're, like you said, on the Mount Rushmore of hockey greats. Yeah. So it's fun to be a part of.
Is there a common denominator between those three guys that you've noticed maybe that sets them apart? Because again, like, you're in the 1%, right? When you're in the NHL, you're a 1%er. But then there's the 1% of the 1%, right? There's those guys that are the freaks, that are the, we got Ovi, who's going to break a record probably next year or the year after, all time types of stuff. Kane, best American of all time. McDavid, probably the best player of all time, right? So is there one thing you can pinpoint about those guys that you'd say that there's like a commonality that those Mount Rushmore guys maybe share?
I think like the easy answer is to say that they're all, competitive. I think most hockey players are competitive. I think what probably separates, those three guys specifically is, they go into each game expecting to be great. They are great. They're expecting to be great, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves to be great. I think that would probably be the one thing that like sticks out to me. I think obviously everyone's competitive. Everyone wants to win. Everyone, a lot of the time, good players like that have great leadership qualities. But I really feel that it's their expectation of themselves to be, at the highest of the high. And especially those three guys, they don't settle for anything less. Like, you can tell they're visibly, upset or frustrated when they don't play well or they don't play up to their standard. And I think, when you hold yourself to that high of a standard, you expect it from yourself every night. And those guys find a way to produce points, produce offensively. All three of them have had over 100 points in the NHL at multiple times, I believe. I think all of them have multiple times. Yeah. I know Kane, McDavid, and I believe Ovechkin too. So, I mean, that's a short list of guys that, have had multiple 100-point seasons. It's not too many of them. And I think the way they do it is all three different ways. McDavid's fast, carries the puck, unbelievable shot, can find a way to score, create on the power play, 5-on-5, shorthanded, whatever it may be. Kane is just one of the best passers of all time. He can hold the puck in the half wall, and it seems sometimes we talk about, like, we don't know why teams just kind of back off him and like let him kind of sit there with it and make passes.
But they do.
You go at him, but he just finds a way to hold the puck, make the right play, look away and make the right pass. Usually cross seam or whatever it may be down low when guys aren't looking. So, and then when it gets to Ovi, and it's completely different. Ovi's also a great passer, which I don't think he gets enough credit for. Almost 700 assists in his career, maybe more. No, yeah, almost 700 assists in his career, and so he can also make passes. But when you're that good of a shooter and you're that much of a threat to shoot, you kind of have to respect the shot. I probably scored I would say around 10 goals in Washington in the last 2 years where everyone thinks he's shooting it and it just goes on my backhand and I tip it in, or off the pad and I just tip it in. So like I said, I'm very fortunate to got to play with those players and still getting to play with those players. But I would say, sorry to kind of ramble on, but I would say it's the, they're kind of their excellence that they demand of themselves.
Mm-hmm. I actually want to follow up with that too, because, you mentioned before how you just got to find a way to give Ovi the puck. Like, he wants it in a different way than Kane and McDavid does. And I want to bring up one of the goals that was scored this past season. And I'm bringing it up because our producer is a huge Leafs fan. And also because I think this play is just hilarious. And I wonder if you and Ovi had talked about it after, but this 2-on-1 you had against Toronto where Strome, you had a clear lane to the net, but Ovi's calling for it, I imagine. And he's, got that thing ready to rip. What's going on the bench after this goal? Are you guys sitting there laughing at the iPad? Like, I mean, this is a crazy goal that happened last year.
Yeah. That's one of those where it's like, I had some 2-on-1s where obviously the D is going to usually take away Ovechkin. Like that's what's going to happen. So you have the
which he did there, which he did that.
Which he did there. But the few times I shot in the 2-on-1 with Ovechkin, I found myself not scoring. And I'm like, even if I can get it over to him at any point, like it's going to be either an open net or a really good chance to score. And no, not that I don't trust myself. I think there's definitely times to shoot. But when I'm like, I know McCabe slid there and he slid and sliding, he was sliding. And I didn't even look at the net. I didn't look at the net one time, basically. So I was just looking over to him the whole time. And I'm like, if I get this over to him, it's a goal. Like I know that for a fact. Where if, I would like to think there's probably a 50-50 chance I was going to score from that spot. Obviously, no one's shooting percentage is 50%, but when you're that close on the 2-on-1, it's probably pretty close to that. But
yeah,
I just saw him waiting there, and I felt like we really needed a goal at that time. We were down 4-2 in the game, and he had already scored in the game, so you just got to go with the hot hand sometimes.
And wait, Stromer, I'm pretty sure that was a TNT broadcast, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I remember watching that game. And I'm yelling at you to shoot the puck the whole time. I'm like, Stromer, shoot it. I see McCabe go down, which that's kind of his move. I mean, you were still in Chicago when McCabe was there, right? Yeah. So you know what his tendencies are going to be. You guys were teammates right before that. And I'm literally yelling at you to shoot that puck. And then obviously the goal happens. And I'm like, well, that's why he makes $5 million. And I do a morning talk show. So yeah.
I also think that it got a little bit blown up because, first of all, Toronto, anything that usually happens with Toronto, it's, a bigger media story. Matthews had scored 2 goals that game. Ovechkin scored 2 goals. So that, the media was already covering that game heavily, and then it's on TNT. And I think just sometimes when those things happen, they blow up a little more than, if it was a Tuesday night in Washington against, a different team and wasn't on TNT, then it probably doesn't, blow up the way that it did. And that he scored. I think it would have been way worse if he didn't score. So I'm very thankful that he was able to put that one on.
Those plays are always funny too, though, because obviously as the play it's happening, it's so fast, and then when you go back and watch it on video, everything looks a little different. I always wonder those conversations on the bench with the iPads. They always intrigue me because every coach growing up, like when I played, obviously says like focus on your next shift, right? But now it's so common in the NHL, like you guys all watch your previous shift kind of as it ends, right? Like it's kind of crazy. I feel like with the iPads and how they've come into play in the NHL and stuff like that.
I agree, and I also think that I knew it was bad because when I got back to the bench, like multiple guys were like, "How do you not shoot that? Like, what do you think?" and then when it's like sometimes if you see something online and it kind of starts to spiral and blow up, and then this one was like instant. So I was like, okay, that maybe that was not the best play, but hey, we scored, and I'll take the assist.
Yeah,
and one closer to Gretzky. So
I was just gonna say there's a very good chance you could be the guy who makes that pass. So I'll knock on wood for you, and I don't want to jinx it. Let's go a little current, Stromer, because I know Brian MacLellan is no longer the GM; he's the president, and they promoted from within. But have you been pretty happy with the offseason? Because I mean, look, you can't not commend Washington for making moves to try to continue to challenge and be competitive with the fact that they've got Ovi still scoring, and they've got guys like you that they went out and they signed and they gave extensions to. Your back end, very underrated how good your back end is. It's pretty stacked back there. So have you felt pretty good about the offseason for your team?
I think it's hard not to, 100%. I mean, we kind of touched on it at the beginning of the podcast, how, we probably didn't I don't want to say we didn't play well enough, because we definitely played well enough to make the playoffs. But, our goal differential obviously wasn't very good. We lost some big games, some big scores. But at the same time, I feel like, with what we went into at the start of last year with Backstrom and Kuznetsov, basically that's the 1 and 2 centers, and how things kind of changed during the season, and then we do make the playoffs. I think it almost gave the organization some confidence that, this rebuild can, not even rebuild, this retool can kind of go faster than, what they might have thought originally. And then as a player, like, obviously you want to, see your team active on free agency day. You want to see your team making some trades and trying to get better. And based on the guys we got, I mean, I think for sure we got better, which is obviously a great thing. I think we added all the pieces that we needed to add, and it's now kind of on us. The management can only do so much; they can only put the players on the ice, and it's up to us to kind of do the rest. So I love the additions we made. I think Chikrin's an unbelievable player. I think underrated is a good word to describe him. I don't think too many people know how good he is. I think he's going to be a stud, and he already is a stud. And I think obviously Matt Roy is a guy that's from what I've heard, I only played against him a couple times, but defensive defenseman that jumps up into the play and makes a good first pass. And then you look at the guys on forward that we got, like Mangiapane's a great player, a guy who's scored almost 30 or 31 time, I think. And PLD is coming off of not a great year up to his standards, and I think he's going to be motivated and excited. And you got to be happy. You got to be looking forward to the season.
Yeah.
Also, you have to think. Yeah.
I think Taylor Radish, a guy pretty well from juniors, right? Who had some pretty good success at times in Chicago. I don't know. I kind of lost track of it a little bit last year. Wasn't really paying close attention to them for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's Duhaime on that fourth line for you guys in the bottom of the lineup. Like you guys look like a team with a bunch of depth now. And look, the Metro, there's opportunity. I mean, the Rangers are going to be good. The Devils are going to be good. But after the Rangers and the Devils, like, you kind of look like you don't really know what you're getting from the Flyers. The Islanders continue to be pretty average. I think so there's definitely a lot of opportunity with the moves that the Caps management made, Johnny, with what they did.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I'm sure they're pleased with the AHL team, right? Back-to-back Calder Cup champs. I know your brher had the winning goal. My good buddy.
Oh yeah, congratulations on that. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah,
so I mean, no, go, Strome.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, obviously that's a great sign for your organization when your team wins 2 straight Calder Cups. That's a great sign. Lapierre was one of our best players in the playoffs, and then the best player for Hershey in the playoffs. So I think that's obviously a huge bonus going into next year, and looking forward to seeing him grow and seeing how good he can be. I think he's a great player. I think he matured a lot. I think he's can be a really, really good player in the NHL, and I think the Caps believe that too. So yeah, I was definitely pumped up for them and for my little brother to get that huge goal. He didn't play at all in the playoffs the year before, so I know he really wanted to be a part of something special. And no, there's not much. You can't be much bigger of a part than what he was. So it was awesome to watch.
Yeah, it was pretty sick. He got those gloves off pretty quickly after he scored that goal too. There was no hesitation with that. It was pretty nice.
Did they win? They won on home ice in Hershey, right?
Yeah.
Were you able to be there for that one, Strome, or too tough with the family and everything?
Yeah, it was tough. My parents were there and my aunt and uncle were there. We had some tentative plans to go down for Game 7, which is on the Wednesday, but we didn't make it for Game 6 on the Monday. So I wish we would have been there. We all went. A lot of my buddies, like 5 or 6 of my buddies, went to Ryan's house and we watched it in the basement. And we had because it was the same time as Game 7, of the Stanley Cup Final. So we had 2 TVs going, and it was a good night of hockey.
Yeah, it was crazy. I wanted to rewind for just 1 second, Stromer, and talk about the playoffs, because I covered that first round series against the Rangers. And, I thought you guys, it was a weird series, right? Like, obviously it ended in a 4-0 sweep, but it didn't really feel like the Rangers were that much better. And that was something that got talked about later on in the playoffs with the Rangers, going up against Florida and whatnot. But I'm curious from your end how you guys felt about your performance in that series, because obviously special teams ended up being the biggest difference. But, we've talked about it throughout this, 20 minutes about the group in the second half and making that playoff push. But when the season ended, how are you guys feeling about yourselves with how you put up against the President's Trophy winner?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously disappointing. There's no way around that. I think I think we exerted a lot of what we had to get to the playoffs in the last 15, 20 games. I think we were finding ways to win in the regular season that we just couldn't do in the playoffs. We were finding ways to win, whether it was our power play got 3 or 4 goals, whether Lindgren completely stole multiple games down the stretch for us. Our PK, we were giving up shorthanded goals in the playoffs, which we were one of the least amount of that in the regular season. So just kind of was like a perfect storm where we weren't like getting blown out by any means. Like, sure, they controlled play at points. I think we controlled play at some points, probably a little less than them, but we just couldn't do that extra, kind of didn't have that extra like gear to kind of find a way to get past them. I think, when you start 2-0 down, and then that game 3 is a huge game, and we get up to a 1-0 lead, and then we give up a shorthanded goal, and then before you know it, like we're up 1-0, then we're down 2-1 after the first. So it's like we kind of just shot ourselves in the foot, a couple too many times, and we ended up couldn't get back from it. So obviously disappointing, but definitely learned a lot about myself and our team, and I think a lot of positives to look forward to next year. Like you said, not a lot of people predicted us to be in the playoffs or anywhere near that. So you do have to take the positives from it and move on to next year.
And just on top of that too, one of the things that I found very enjoyable was talking to Spencer Carberry in that series. I feel like, people that don't pay attention to Washington don't really know much about him because obviously it was his first year behind the bench. But can you talk about him and just his message? Because he was one of the most well-spoken coaches that I've had the pleasure of interviewing. I mean, I was very, it was eye-opening to hear him speak for 4 games there.
Yeah, he's very detail oriented. I think you obviously saw that in the interviews. I think he articulates what he wants to say very well, and I think he does that to us as well. I think he's like I said, he's very detailed about the little things that he sees in the game. I think he's a very smart hockey mind, and the details that he sees within the game are what he preaches to us and what he tells us and what he sees. So I think anytime you have a coach that's that cares, you can tell how much he cares. Like he talks for 15 minutes after the game in a press conference, and like you could tell he cares. And obviously that's what you want as a player. You want a coach that really cares about his team and his players, and we got that. So no, it's fun to be a part of that team and the coaching staff. And like I said, I'm just excited for next year, and I'm really looking forward to building on what we had last year.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.